Welcome back to Rhody Beat Report, the brand new show from Rhody Front Office. My name is Justin Theriault. I'm joined by Alexa Baker, Zack Petrick, and Emily Lanzarone. Today we're going to be going over the Rams' dominating performance against the Camels. We're going to look ahead to LIU and talk about what we've learned so far from this 2024 Rams squad.
On Saturday, the Rhode Island Rams improved to 2-0 when playing at Meade Stadium in 2024 with a decisive 21-9 victory over the Camels, sending them home to North Carolina with a loss. And to get into the game, it really started with the ground game finally clicking.
Yeah, for Rhode Island, it was 131 yards on the ground on 32 carries. Well, not necessarily super efficient. You wouldn't say it was inefficient. It was definitely the best we've seen this ground game so far this season. And for me, it was Devin Farrell continuing to really help his team with his legs, right? We saw the third down touchdown run that was over 20 yards. It was an impressive play by Devin, reading the field, watching all of your wide receivers run those crossing routes to the right and taking advantage of nobody being on the left side of the field and great downfield blocking from those receivers. Malik Grant led the way for that packed running back room. He had 16 carries for 55 yards. We saw a couple impressive runs as well from third down back Deion Salas, who had a great 21-yard carry, and I was really impressed with his pass blocking. There was one play we saw where it was called back due to a holding penalty, but it was a great pass from Devin, and Deion did a fantastic job of picking up the blitzing linebacker.
Alongside the ground game, the Rams' real defensive statement made at home, 2-0, as Alexa mentioned, now at home. They only allowed 9 points to the Camels, 7 pass breakups, 2 tackles, a fumble recovery by A.J. Pena, who then was CAA Defensive Player of the Week. He had 8 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and he recovered that fumble. So an impressive performance from him, continuing to build on his strong 2024 campaign. So he was the leader in that defense. We've seen him be that, but a great all-around performance from that group. Campbell only 3.4 yards on the ground per run. So a great defensive performance, an improved run defense from the Rams, which continued to help them throughout the game, only allowing 9 points. That touchdown coming later in the game. Big play threat for the Camels. Wide receiver Sincere Brown, only 7 receptions for 61 yards and that touchdown later in the game, but they kept him quiet throughout the first half. The Rams went into the half up 7-3, and that was the key point for the Rams. They were able to come out of the half and score right away, which led them into that victory. So strong defense then propelled the offense, and that's really what propelled the Rams to victory on Saturday.
And I think it led to that complete team victory, just that overall kind of team effort. This was a win that was done, I think, by the entire team, from each team, special teams, everybody involved. The pass offense was quick, efficient, and effective for the Rams, who had 128 yards passing and 2 receiving touchdowns and multiple positive plays being called back. Punter Devin Walter, who we touched on last week, I have a feeling he's going to be a name that's going to be brought up over and over again. Got to show the punters love too. He had a pretty impressive game last week, and he did the same thing this week. He had a performance controlling the field position battle, 4 of the 6 punts landing within the Campbell 20-yard line. And then there was visceral camaraderie and leadership, lifting up one another throughout the highs and lows of the games on the Rams sideline. This just felt like a team that kind of used brotherhood and used the sense of leadership and just being teammates to kind of propel this win into more positive territory as well. And with that victory, the Rams now improve 1-0 on the season in conference play with Hampton, New Hampshire, Maine, Monmouth, Delaware, Albany, and Bryant to go in CAA play. And this is actually the 5th season in a row that the Rams start their conference schedule with a win.
We've now had a few days to digest this Rams win, their first in conference in 2024. We'll turn it to the rest of the desk for their analysis on how the Rams pulled out the victory.
Yeah, and I think it's only appropriate that we start with the defensive backs, right? They've been such a great unit so far this season, and they had their hands full this week going up against Sincere Brown. We talked about it on last week's episode. He's a super talented wide receiver and had a great first 2 weeks of the season. This week, his numbers might have shown he had a decent game, but really he was quiet for, 90% of this one. He was a non-factor, and really the whole passing offense was a non-factor. 39 passing attempts for only 200 yards is really inefficient. And I think that trio of Malay, Price, and Johnson, they've been amazing so far this season. This game, they had 22 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and they had five pass breakups. And I think the 2 tackles for loss stands out to me because through 3 weeks, we've seen the Rams generate a lot of pressure using their defensive backs. I've been really impressed with that. Whenever the coaching staff can generate pressure just schematically, it's always going to benefit the defense. And we also saw Andre DePina-Gray continue to be one of those guys who just has an impact all over the field. He had a great game against the Gophers, and this week he only had 3 tackles, but he's one of those guys that if you actually watch the game, if you're sitting in the stands or you're watching it on TV, you know that he made a really big impact on the game, whether or not those stats are in the box score.
Yeah, and we already touched on the Rams' run defense earlier, but nothing was more impressive than Cole Brockwell's ability to fill the run gaps and Wesley Neal Jr. and company's big 4th and 1 stop at the end of the first half, which was such an electric play. It provided massive momentum going into halftime. And the Rams have been fantastic at preventing big gains on the ground this year, which is something that was an issue for them last year. So we love to see this sort of improvement.
On the other side of the field, it's the Rams offense, that propels you to victory behind that defensive performance. A balanced attack for the Rams this week. It became early. The Rams wanted to run the ball with that committee behind quarterback Devin Farrell. They were able to run the ball early, and then the Rams, with their trio of receivers, Buchanan, Harris, and Gaines, finished with 10 catches for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. The touchdowns by Buchanan and Gaines. So that was the way the Rams were able to move the ball in the second half. Quick passes, smart decisions from the Rams, not going for the home run ball every time, even though we did see it a little bit, the big play, the big chunk play, and when the Rams did go for it, they were successful in that kind of area. But quick, smart plays for the Rams, able to move the ball down the field in the second half in chunks a little bit, able to score 2 touchdowns early in the second half and to jump out to that big lead. So for the Rams, if they can clean up their penalties a little bit, they can take the next step, eventually get to that 30-point mark. But right now, they haven't had to get to the 30-point mark because against FCS opponents, the Rams defense only allowing 13 points per game. With 3 games down, the Rams' regular season is already a quarter of the way in the book. So what have we learned so far, starting with the offense?
Yeah, Devin Farrell has flashed the potential to be the long-term starting quarterback for Rhode Island. Take away that performance against Minnesota in just 2 games. He's had 415 yards passing with 4 touchdown passes while adding 18 rush attempts and 88 yards for a rushing touchdown. The Rams committee backfield only just starting to click, but the explosiveness of Farrell makes for an unpredictable and I was about to say underground. Can I just start from unpredictable?
Yeah.
Unpredictable, dangerous ground attack.
Yeah, and the Rams love this receiver quartet of Marquise Buchanan, Sean Harris Jr., Greg Gaines III, and Tommy Smith, who we also touched on a little bit last week, and for good reason. They are consistent. They are bringing the right things to the table and just making sure that they are keeping just the momentum up for this quartet. The offensive line is starting to solidify itself as a unit despite the recent injury to Thomas Buxton, who did not play Saturday night. Instead, it was a 2023 starter, Adam McKenna, who returned to the starting lineup without missing a beat. He is just versatile and kind of can be put anywhere that we need him to, and we can count on him to just do what needs to be done.
And last week we talked a lot about the Rams front four, and this week I think they kind of backed up everything we said, right? Alexa, you mentioned it earlier, that incredible 4th down stop at the end of the first half was absolutely incredible. And those guys up there, whether it's Primrose or Wesley Neal or even the linebackers like Cole Brockwell or Devin Hightower, those guys have just been absolutely fantastic this season. We already kind of talked about the defensive backs and how great they've been, right? And a defense like that, like you said, Zach, only 13 points a game to FCS opponents. It's going to be crucial during the CAA portion of this schedule. And we've also seen, outside linebacker AJ Penna, who just won CAA Defensive Player of the Week. He had 2 sacks on the game, 8 tackles. He had plenty of, quarterback hurries. And we, talked about it last week. The Rams had so many, quarterback hurries. They were getting to the quarterback, but they just couldn't get him down. And that's frustrating, especially when you're playing against athletic quarterbacks that can get out of the pocket and make plays with their legs. This week, that was not an issue. They finished those hurries. They got those sacks. And if they're able to continue to do that going forward, then this front 7 for the Rams, backed up by such talented defensive backs, can lead to maybe the best defense in the entire CAA, which will be huge when you go up against teams like UNH or Delaware down the stretch of the season.
And now for the underappreciated part of the team, the special teams for the Rams with punter Devin Walter. He has been fantastic whenever the Rams have needed him to get on the field, able to flip the field really well so far this season. And long snapper Donato Crisanti has looked really ready to go out there and lay out any returner who tries to bring a punt back if that's possible. And the Rams have done a great job being able to contain returners, especially on Saturday. So that's another key portion of that Rams special teams. And then on the quote-unquote offensive part of the Rams special teams, except for Week 1's block kick Tygroff has hit all of his marks in his second year as the Rams kicker, while Will Johnson continues to improve as the kickoff specialist. So the Rams await an opportunity to get their return game going as well. So they haven't gotten that return game on kickoffs and punts going just yet, but that's something that I expect that we'll see very soon, something they'll create more lanes for their returners.
Yeah, too much talent back there to have no results yet.
Rhode Island travels to a different island next week in an away game battle against the Long Island Sharks ahead of their bye week. So far this season, the Sharks are without a win, starting 0-3 with losses against UAlbany, TCU, and Lehigh. It will be Long Island's homecoming game, so it will be a packed stadium environment, which could lead to some home field advantage for the Sharks.
Yeah, and quarterback Luca Stanzani has performed well through 3 games with the Sharks, but it's clear that they've wanted to establish the run in this early part of the season. 119 rush attempts to just 71 through their first 12 quarters of the season. LIU also, they like to utilize multiple quarterbacks in addition to Stanzani, so be ready for various looks from that LIU offense as they face off against Rhody.
But on the other side, LAU has a pretty impressive defense. It is a well-coached team that wants to control the clock. They're going to want to keep URI on the field. It was clear when this happened between Minnesota and Campbell. They were on the field a little bit too long, and LAU, I think, is going to use this to their advantage. The clock is going to be so important to this game, and I think LAU is really going to utilize that against the performance against Rhody.
Yeah, this is a game that Rhode Island simply cannot look LIU. I know that they're 0-3, but this is a team with a lot of talent, right? And it's a program that's really starting to build itself up. They objectively were atrocious at the end of the 2010s, and now to start the 2020s, they've had back-to-back, 4-7 seasons, and, they aren't as bad as the record might say. And for Rhode Island, this game, it really does have, major playoff implications for the Rams. They have to confidently win this one. If they don't, and especially if they lose this one, it will not look good on their long-term season resume. This is a team that has to reach 8 wins to get into the postseason. Any FCS team, especially in a conference like the CAA that reaches that 8-3 mark, gets into the postseason 99% of the time. It's just a fact. And in 2022, the Rams had a fantastic team, but 7-4 just wasn't good enough. So a game like this, it's essential that you take care of business against the Sharks. You have great opponents down the line. You've already played Minnesota. You're going to have to play UNH at UNH. You're going to have to play Delaware on the road. Those are the games that you want to win, but a confident win against LIU can give you a little bit more leeway down the stretch of the season against more difficult opponents. That way, when voters are looking at Rhode Island's long-term resume, they see that they beat an opponent like this very confidently.
Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of Rhody Beat Report. This is Alexa Baker. I'm joined here by Justin Theriault, Zack Petrick, and Emily Lanzarone. And tune in next week during the Rams bye week.